Ellipses are not commonly tested on the ACT, however, they do appear on the occasional exam. In this video, we're going to go over the basics of ellipses. We'll start with the equation of an ellipse. It can take on two forms: x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. In the second form of the equation, all we are doing is switching where a squared and b squared appear. For both forms of the equation, a should be greater than or equal to b. The point hk indicates the center of the ellipse. A is going to be the length of the major radius, and b is going to be the length of the minor radius. The reason why there are two forms of the equation is because if the major axis is horizontal, then the a squared term will appear under the x term. If the major axis is vertical, then the a squared will appear under the y term. You can see in the picture of the ellipse several features of the ellipse. The longer axis of symmetry on an ellipse is known as the major axis and is twice the length of the major radius. The shorter axis of symmetry on an ellipse is known as the minor axis and is twice the length of the minor radius. A vertex is found at each end of the major axis, and a covertex is found at the end of each minor axis. You'll notice 2 points, F1 and F2. Those are known as the foci, which is the plural of focus, of an ellipse. Every ellipse has 2 foci, and what makes them unique is that the sum of the distances between any point on an ellipse and each focus is always the same. The 2 foci of an ellipse also always lie on the major radius. The focal length of an ellipse is the distance between the center of the ellipse and a focus. And you can actually find it by using the equation f is equal to the square root of a squared minus b squared. When using that equation, be sure to know which axis is the major axis, whether it's vertical or horizontal, because that will determine whether a appears under the y term or the x term. Now that we've covered the basics of ellipses, let's do some sample problems. Use the following equation below to answer the following questions. X plus 3 squared over 25 plus y minus 1 squared over 169 equals 1. What are the coordinates of the center of the ellipse? Well, we know the standard equation has the center at hk. And in the equation we have x minus h squared and y minus k squared. So the center of this must be -3, 1. Is the major axis horizontal or vertical? If we look at the two denominators for the first two terms, we see that 169 is going to be larger than 25. Since 169 appears under the y term, that means that the major axis is vertical. What is the length of the minor radius? Well, we know that b squared is equal to 25. So b is simply going to be the square root of 25. And that's going to be the length of the minor radius. So we get the length is 5. What is the length of the major axis? Well, this is asking for the major axis, not the major radius. So we can find the major radius by taking the square root of 169, which is 13. Then we're going to multiply that by 2 because the major axis is twice the length of the major radius. So that'll give us 26. What is the focal length? Well, the focal length is given by the equation f equals the square root of a squared minus b squared. So we're going to have the square root of a squared, which we know is 169, minus b squared, which is equal to 25. That's going to give us the square root of 144, which of course is equal to 12. What are the coordinates of each focus? We know the focal length is 12. We also know the center of the ellipse is found at the point -3, 1. We also know that the major axis is vertical. So we should start at the point -3, 1 and travel vertically a distance of 12 units in both the positive and negative direction. That would give us -3, 13, and -3, -11.